Right. Hey, thanks everyone for coming along. This is the first and probably the last of the in-person at lunchtime meetups in 2020. We will have them next year. We'll hopefully a bunch more stuff. We've had a few challenges. This is going to be live streamed video, but thank you to Coretex for hosting. This is a really awesome opportunity for us. I think we've been working with these guys for a long time. They've done a whole lot of amazing stuff, and it's great to hear their journey. So I just want to thank the team for stepping up and really sharing their journey. And I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to Sajiwa. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Wells is going to be doing all the talking. I'm just going to kick you guys off with some housekeeping and a few things around that. So set up. No. So a few housekeeping rules, not rules, restrooms. For those of you who didn't turn up at the start, you can go through here to reach the restrooms. You can also go around the corner past that office. Just remember, once you go out, you can't come back in again without one of these. So if there's a Coretex employee, they'll let you back in. Otherwise, just come back around the front the same way you came in. If the fire alarm goes off for some reason, we just walk out, turn right, and just walk down to the church. It's about 2 minutes walk. I'm hoping that won't happen. So we should be good to go. So in terms of the agenda for today, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes just quickly giving you guys a bit of an overview about Coretex and what we do, just so you know kind of what the story is. Then Wells will take over for pretty much the majority of it. He'll talk about kind of what we're doing with DevOps, the challenges we faced, the approaches we took, and our stories and kind of what we're doing going forward. And the most exciting part of that will be the demo as well, where Wells will actually show you guys real life how things work, and then some questions at the end. Microsoft have come to the party with some swag, so there'll be pop-up questions and prizes for those who ask questions. So we'll see how we go. So Coretex. So before coming in here, how many of you guys who are not employees actually heard about Coretex? Hands up. And vendors who are working with us. Okay, not many, right? So we are a company that really focuses on keeping the world safer, greener, and more productive. That's kind of what we live for. And we do that through an IoT platform that we built in-house. So the IoT platform is used to go across a number of different product verticals to provide essentially telemetry and insights for customers and drivers of those vehicles to become safer, greener, and more productive. As a high-level kind of size of the company, so we process around 1 billion transactions a month on our platform. So that's quite large compared to your kind of traditional banking platforms, mainly because we are dealing with machine-to-machine communication there, right? We have around 63,000 plus and growing vehicles tracked on our platform worldwide. Most vehicles tend to have at least a couple of devices on them. So we're looking at over 100,000 devices talking into our platform. So it's a high volume of data traffic, and most of these require real-time or near real-time back and forth communication. We have around 1,200 customers on our platform worldwide. About 40,000 of those vehicles are in North America, and the rest are in Australia and New Zealand. So we primarily target those two geographies. We have over 170 and growing staff at Coretex. We have around 20 more vacancies we are growing into in the next few months. So we'll be over 200 next year, early on. We are based in Auckland, so that's our headquarters. We are in our headquarters right now. We have offices in San Diego, in New York, and in Sydney. So we're not a tiny little company. We're bigger than kind of what we seem. So the challenges here on the platform really come down to that volume of traffic you're talking about, right? It's very difficult to create scalable, modern platforms that can handle that volume. And we'll also talk about kind of the strategies we've done to make that happen. So just a kind of a flavor of the type of customers we have. So you may not recognize a lot of the brands, but you will recognize some of them. So Starbucks is on our platform, FedEx, Woolworths, Medline. So Medline is one of the major medical equipment, medical device and equipment transporting places in the US. So during COVID, they were quite busy again on our platform. Holcim, Vulcan, these are construction places. But yeah, the big ones you've heard about, I'm sure, are on the top there. So we have quite an interesting challenge I think we've had. And well, I'll hand over to Wells, who will really talk about the DevOps approaches we've taken in the organization over the last few months, kind of where we started from, what we wanted to do, and kind of where we got to today. So Wells, over to you.
Thanks, Dad. My name is Wells. It's fantastic for me to speak in the community and so many audience. And thanks all for coming. So hopefully I can give you some useful information that you might find that's relevant for your job, for your work. Okay, so a little bit by myself. So that's a picture was took in 13 years ago when I was so excited to get my first job as software engineer. So for me, engineering is all about delivery. So we have a vision driven, but we focus on producing outcomes. So the automation is really the key to let us continuously deliver value. And yeah, in my spare time, I'm actually a big fan of basketball. So what is DevOps? There are so many definitions. You may have heard about that. So actually, some of them, they focus on talking about practices that we deliver software with high quality. Then we also see some definitions that talking about union people, the products that enable continuous delivery of value. And also we are talking about the DevOps is culture movement. So we need to shift our culture to be more close collaboration in terms of collaboration and the handshake between development and corporations. So everybody is talking about DevOps, but DevOps transformation is really quite challenged due to some reason. So why is challenge? So first of all, no standard definition. So there's no magic key. So you can open a box and get DevOps from there and install for your organization. And there's so many philosophies and so many methodologies and tools, processes. So it's very hard to find a universal solution for the organization. Then the second, the DevOps part, the path to DevOps is actually unique for organizations. Like large firms, they have a big ops team, operation team, they have a development team. They're struggling to smooth the collaborations and combine the capability together so that they can shift the DevOps culture. Like mid-sized companies, maybe they're struggling to on a cloud migration journey. They want to incorporate DevOps culture into the journey. And also some startup companies, they may be already cloud native. They have a great potential to do continuous deployment. They can ship their software multiple times a day. So every organization is different in terms of the context of DevOps transformation. And then another reason is that, so we never in the ideal world, a perfect world. There are gaps between philosophies and the reality. So we're talking about microservices, but in reality, we might have monoliths or hybrids, and we're talking about continuous delivery multiple times per day. But sometimes we need the release cycle. It can be a month, or could be a quarter, or even a year. And we also we're talking about cloud native, but sometimes we are still VM based or even on-premise. Then we talk about automation, but yeah, sometimes we need spend a lot of effort on the manual testing. So there are a lot of reality problems, so we need to solve. Another reason, DevOps is an ongoing journey, cannot happen within one day, within a very short period of time. So there's so many constraints, so many challenges for DevOps and transformation. Then what is DevOps for our point of view? DevOps, essentially, DevOps is an ongoing cultural movement with involved tools and processes to establish a capability where we can continuously deliver software, deliver value to customers. So a common approach for most of the organizations, they want to get the culture right in the first place. Then we set some boundaries or even governance guidelines. So what kind of process we want to follow, what kind of tools we want to use. Then the hope is actually to establish the capability. But our approach is slightly different. We want to kind of bottom up. So we realize that DevOps culture, shifting a culture is really is ongoing journey, cannot happen within short period of time. And also the all the process and the tools that we use should serve a specific purpose. That is to establish capability, continuous deployment, delivery of value, or make the system always available. So we want to explore the most appropriate or the best tools for our use so that we can establish the capabilities. So our path is actually, we started building some stories from last year. From in Q4 last year, we started when we started doing cloud migration to migrate our platform to Service Fabric. Along the journey, we actually we started building the CI/CDs, infrastructure as code, and the also blue-green zero downtime upgrades in our core platform. In the first place was Service Fabric. Then we moved to the Kubernetes service AKS stuff. Then we also explore the Git flow and daily deployment, how we orchestrate, how we simplify the collaboration in the React UI project. Then in mid of this year, we started thinking about how we can extract these practices and process so we can really formalize DevOps practice in Coretex. So we define the overall strategies, visions, or extract the principles, guidelines, then we formalize practices. Now we are going through engineering-wide initiative, so we can replicate all of these successful stories into other areas. So we can really we can shift our culture within the entire organization. So ultimately, we want to achieve engineering excellence in Coretex. So that's our path. I'm going to share some of our successful stories, the CI/CD part, Git flow, and zero downtime upgrade, and the monitoring stuff. CI/CD. So CI/CD is not about just pipelines. It's not about the builds or releases. It's all about to deliver really an outcome, establish some capabilities for continuous automatic deployment, and potentially we can shift to continuous deployment in future. So the outcomes we have, single source of truth, what that means. So all our packages are built from the continuous integration platform. So no manual steps for packaging the binaries. All the deployables should come from the CI system. All the source code configurations should come from the repository. So that's one of the outcomes. Another thing is that all the Azure resources are provisioned through the infrastructure as code and the pipelines. We don't, for the entire solution, we don't accept any manual steps, manual provisioning for any of the Azure resources. So that means we have consistency across different environments. We can change, we can evolve our infrastructure very easily. It's fully automated, no manual steps for the entire flow. So by doing all of this stuff, we can orchestrate whatever we want. We have daily deployment, or we can orchestrate a maiden installation or rolling upgrade or blue-green. So we have the flexibility to orchestrate the workflow. The metrics we have, we got 6 environments for the core platform. We got 6 environments across ANZ, dev test, and US production environment. So we are managing 40+ Azure resources through our ARM template and the pipelines. So we got 55 plus services in the core platform. Mainly working on 3 branches because we are following the Git flow as 70 builds for all these 3 branches. We got 150+ release pipelines for all the environments. So 150 is a big number, but actually when we have a good architecture for the pipelines, we don't need much effort to build up this 150, because most of them actually the same. We just by controlling the configurations, the variables, so we can easily replicate the flow, the pipelines for a different environment. Then Git flow. Why we need to use Git flow? So the short answer is that we are actually evolving to a position where we can continuous deployment. But now we are not in that position. We want to have a streamlined process, but a controlled release cycle. So we need to have kind of control how frequently we can release. But the process is streamlined, so we can shift very easily to continuous deployment in future. So the outcomes, a Git flow, we know exactly which branch we should commit. So we have developer branch, we have release branch for QA validation, hotfix branch for to fix some emergencies, urgent bugs. It's automatic versioning is happening in our environment. So we have the version will be calculated using an extension called the Git version. So we fully automated for the versioning management. Then QA quality assurance is embedded in the workflow transition. Like we are doing integration test in the development environment branch. Then we have regression testing, smoke testing, the acceptance testing on the release branch. Then master branch, we do some sanity checks and smoke test when we deploy to production environment. So it's fully embedded in the workflow. Then we are very flexible to orchestrate the workflow. So we can daily or weekly or continuous deployment, we can orchestrate. When we have these capabilities, we have the flexibility for orchestration. Zero downtime upgrade. So the objective for us is really to make our system always available for the customer. We want to minimize the downtime, no matter what scenarios we are performing. Like we are covering maiden installation when we move, like we need to move a solution to a different region, or we need to deploy a new tenant for new customers, then we can easily deploy that. It just takes a few hours to deploy everything, so from scratch. Rolling upgrade. So zero downtime, we're using Service Fabric rolling upgrade. We're also using deployment slots, so we can basically update our services to minimize the downtime. Also, blue-green is extremely important for us, because as we are moving to continually evolving our infrastructure, we got many chances that we need to rebuild the infrastructure, involve the infrastructure. Also, we have major releases which is not backwards compatible sometimes. So use blue-green. That means we can test the new changes in production, and we can easily roll back, and we can minimize the downtime while performing these upgrades. So some tips when we are implementing the blue-green. So basically our approach is that each environment, blue or green, they are self-contained. So that means they can be separate to each other. They are isolated to each other, and that they can have separate independent life cycle. So we can shut down, we can bring up. It's very flexible, and we're using the network architecture is also important. So we need to have the flexibility so we can really operate this, adjust the orchestration or the architecture. We need to have this capability. Then as I mentioned, that we leverage some past features, the Service Fabric rolling, upgrade deployment slots, traffic manager to manage the HTTP endpoint switchover. There are a lot of platform features that we can use to simplify our blue-green mechanism, and it's fully automated. So Yeah, so when the Madden, we can easily bring up a blue environment, then we can switch over the traffic manager or switch over other parts. So it's fully automated. So monitoring is very important for us to the different levels. So the infrastructure we are pretty much using, we're pretty much Azure based. We're using a lot of not just VMs, but also some PaaS features, app service, functions, service bus, a secure managed instance. And the applications, we have .NET applications, React UI, which is the most popular framework for the user interface. We are also using some microservices platform, Docker-based, managed by AKS. So visibility, we have dashboards to visualize how the applications are performing. So we got alerts, centralized logging, so that we can visualize the metrics, how the system is performing. And then we have actions. So auto healing, and we can schedule jobs to perform some tasks, and also standard operation procedures. And we're using Microsoft Teams as a collaboration platform. So the team will be notified when any incidents happen, then we can respond as soon as possible. So yeah, mix the tools to help us to achieve that vision. Going forward, so as I mentioned, that we are going through engineering-wide initiative we call DevOps everywhere. So we have built some stories in the small areas, but now it's time to replicate to everywhere. So high-level vision, and the ultimate goal is engineering excellence. So from a DevOps perspective, we think engineering excellence means our workflow can constantly deliver value, can shift our software faster and continuously, full automation. Yeah, so it's reliable to flow. And our system is reliable, resilient, always available. So we minimize downtime. We can if any issue happens, we can discover quickly, and also respond to restore the system very quickly. Way of working, it's we can continue improvement. In our way of working is called agile and lean, so we can move faster. Well, it's not easy task to make that happen. So we need kind of joint effort from the entire engineering team. So we don't want to have a centralized DevOps team who will be doing all the job. That's not what we want. We also we don't want to rely on single the engineer at the team that they take all the job, they're doing by themselves. So we want to have governance, but we also want to have the domain team to take the ownership to do that. So DevOps team own the initiative overall. So overall success, we just define the visions, define principles, and coach the teams, and to help them build up skills and promote a DevOps culture. Also, sometimes when the competence is missing or resource is missing, we need to supply that to get things done, to make things happen. We own the delivery. We make sure the delivery is happening, the transformation is happening in Coretex. Then the domain team, they implement the practices as agreed. So they need to understand our vision, understand principles. They do assessment based on current situation. What is missing? What is the gap? How we can build them up. Most importantly, how we can deliver, how we can build the capabilities that is working in other areas. So that's very important. They deliver the work in their backlog. So this is kind of approach we want to take to make that happen. So we define the vision, strategies, principles. Then we do assessment for each team. What is missing? What are the gaps? Then we identify the area for implementation or for improvement. Then plan with the team. Plan their work in the team. If they need to build up CI/CD or infrastructure as code, blue, green, everything. So need to be in their backlog. Then we deliver. So the DevOps team will be acting as a delivery manager, something like that, to work with the team to make sure it's happening, not to rely on the team. We want to have a centralized delivery to make that really happen. And measurement, continually measure how we're doing and how we can improve. That's the approach. We also talk about evolution model. So our thinking is actually we got 3 phases. The first phase is we started adopting DevOps. So we are talking about the CI/CD, RIC, and deployment, the automatic deployment. So the ideal is that we can deploy our software in a fully automated manner without manual steps. So we have the capability to continuously deploy. Then we need to deliver in confidence, because when you have the automation, that means you can always deliver. You need to have confidence when you deliver. So that means we will do test automation. We will do a DevSecOps to make sure we have the code analysis, and to make sure we fulfill some license compliance requirements. And so we want to shift the microservices architecture or componentization architecture, because we want to build independent and releasable blocks. Otherwise, it's hard for us to release in confidence. If we have so many confidence, we have a complex system, it's very hard to deliver continuously. Then the third phase is focus on value. So you are delivering your software, but it doesn't necessarily mean you are delivering value. So we need to focus on our business metrics. What stuff are really important for the customers, can really provide value to customers. So that's our evolution model. So it's DevOps transformation is never end. It's ongoing journey. So we recognize that. So this model we are going to be evolution of us, and we're going to continually look at that to make sure we will be on the path. So that's my presentation. So the next one I'm gonna do a demo. So it's end-to-end workflow in AKS solutions, how we can from code to production, how we roll out in a fully automated manner. What it's about? So I'm going to demonstrate some technologies that we are really using in Coretex. Full automation, Git flow, automatic versioning, automation, test automation, and continuous deployment rollback. So I'm going to use a simple Azure voting app. It's app deployed in AKS. So the flow is something like I got the pull request, and I merge this pull request to development branch. You're going to trigger the image, generating the image, then bring up the dev environment, run, deploy the latest version, runs automation, and when it passed, we check the release flow. And the release flow is going to to simplify the demonstration, I don't have validation in the release flow, but we will finish the release straight away. Then you're going to merge to master, then deploy to production. We can roll back as if we want. So then I'm gonna share my screen. So share, stop sharing, desktop. So what do we have? So this is a voting app from Azure. So it includes two parts. One is the front end, another is the back end. These two parts are deployed in AKS. So we just very simply, the interface is quite simple. If we click cat, we vote for cat, then the result will be displayed here. We can also reset. The data is stored in Redis. This is the production environment. So we got the dev environment is currently not available. So we need to bring it up using full automation. Then we have the resource groups. We look at what the resources we have. So we are using the traffic manager profiles and container registry, the AKS cluster for the production, the VNet. All of these resources are provisioned fully automatically, no manual steps. Then we can go to the because we are using a private AKS cluster. So I have to jump to a private Linux box. So login. Then I got two scripts. So I can switch to the production cluster. I just want to use kubectl to get ports. So okay, so we see we got two ports running. One is the backend and another is front end. So I want to also show the versions now we're currently running. So maybe we can grab image. As you can see, we currently 0.10.0. So that's the version. Later on, we can see what will be the change. Then we hosted the AutoCode into Azure repo. So if you look at the structure, we got the automation, put everything into the same repo. Then we got the app, IAC, all the ARM template. Yeah, for the AKS, container registry, log analytics, VNet, got some convenient PowerShell so that we can integrate all the deployment. Then we got the Kuba YAML files, just put everything into the same repo. Then here is my pull request. So if you look at my changes, so I changed the title. So instead of a voting app in Coretex, then I also changed the test automation to match the title. So actually, we got 3 test cases. One is to make sure the components are visible. The second one is we gonna try vote for cat, vote for dog, then we check the result. The third one is to check the title. So it's quite simple, just for demonstration. So when I complete this merge, I'll prove that. So hopefully it's going to trigger the pipelines. Oh, sorry. I just need to I cancel this one. Sorry, I just cancel. So this pull request is actually merged to master. We like some actually I want to merge to developer branch. So what I'm gonna do is that I raise a new pull request. Okay, so that's fine. I can do from here, get checkout. Okay, so I can actually merge master because okay, so because our changes has been merged to master, so I pull from master, then merge. Check out master. Then I check out developer. So instead of doing pull merge, I can merge master. Okay, so if I push changes to developer branch, it's going to trigger the build. So as we can see, this build has been triggered. So what this build does is we can look at this is quite simple. So we are using Git version to calculate what version for this particular branch. Then build the images, and then we also build the automation repo. Then publish as an artifact, so we can use in the release pipeline. Then when this build pass, we can actually look at the versioning stuff. So this Git version is going to calculate what versions for this build. So as we can see, it's going to go through what tags we have and what release branches we have, and then set the build number. So we're going to use the build number to push the container images. So if you look at the container registry, so we have alpha, beta, prod. So we put them into a separate path. Then this is alpha version. That's the version we just pushed to container registry. Then the release pipeline should be triggered already. So we got the release pipeline triggered because we have continuous deployment. So what the release pipeline does is to provision the AKS cluster using ARM template, do everything for us. So we can look at tasks. So we deploy the resource group, deploy ARM template, then set up, because it's a private cluster, set up the virtual network link so we can access from our private Linux box. Then it's going to take some time. So I'm gonna show what the structures we have in terms of the pipelines. So we are using Git flow. So a separate build to monitor different branches, developer, feature, master, release, and we also have a release management. Like we can start a release, creating a release branch. Then finish release means we merge the release branch. We finish the validation, merge to master as well as developer, then trigger the production rollout. Then if we look at what release pipelines we have, so we are using this structure. So deploy AKS, so deploy everything, deploy the provision Azure resources, deploy the application, are ready to go, run smoke test, run test automation. And we also shut down the AKS every day. Then production, we have the same structure. Actually, the pipeline are the same, but we are managing the variables and using variable groups. So we have the dev, AKS configuration, microservices, production. They are pretty much follow the same pattern, so we can easily manage a large scale of pipelines. Then I want to also show you the architecture. So we AKS cluster deployed to the same resource group, and then we got log analytics, traffic manager used for name resolution for the UI. Then is a private cluster. So the API server only accessible from the VNet link. We're using the hub spoke architecture. So we got the agent talking to the hub, then talking to the API server. So it's not exposed to public. The developers commit code to Azure repos, and then the Azure pipeline deployed to the AKS using self-hosted agent. Also push image or get the images from the container registry. So that is the architecture. Let's check how the pipeline, how the release is going. So it's still deploying the ARM template. It's going to take a while to finish. Not yet. Oh, maybe one question I can ask is that so the build pipelines pushing images to container registry, as we can see, we got this one. So the release pipeline needs to take this version to deploy to AKS. So my questions, how we can do that? How we get this particular version deployed to AKS? That's my question.
Oh, you're asking that? You're asking
Yeah.
Anyone want to
Yeah.
if they can answer that question? That's a tricky one. It's a good one, but.
Yeah.
Is he pushing that as an output of your template deployments?
Template deployment?
Yeah, as an output of the
No. So
I can't
because
teach you. I'm not gonna
yeah,
answer.
because
Would it be just simple as using your slots?
using the slot.
Yes.
Because every time to answer your questions, because not every time we provision the resources using ARM template. So yeah, probably we just we don't have ARM template, but we still deploy the latest version. We need to get the version and deploy to AKS.
Or would you use your Git version numbering and click on that?
Yeah, Git version is actually we use Git version to calculate the number for the builds. So the build we get the build number. We got the build number there. The build number will be the same as this one. We got the build number. Then we pass the build number to the release pipeline. The release pipeline can get the build number. So let me show you. So we got deploy. We got this PowerShell script. So we got the release artifact number, the build number, set into replace token. So set into the YAML. So the YAML, if you look at the YAML, yeah, this is actually a tokenized. What's that? Yeah, okay, so we didn't see that, but anyway, that's a token in the YAML. Then we can specify, we can replace token in the release during the runtime. Then we get the version, deploy the AKS. Yeah. So this to ask a question. So okay. So.
And there is a couple of questions online. You want to take those?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
You want to take one now while you wait to build, or it's failed? Live demo, say. Yeah, I can answer the first question while you figure that out. So,
yeah.
So one of the questions we have online is, how big is your DevOps team and how long did it take to build it up to a stage where it made a noticeable impact to the overall engineering process? So back in May last year is kind of when we set up DevOps as a department, I guess, within engineering. We had one person in the team at the time, and we hired another one, so we had about 2. And then I think when we started off the process that Wells is talking about, we grew to about 3, and we're now down to back to 2 again. The reason, but just to clarify, the reason we're actually able to make so much progress with just 2 people is that we don't rely on the DevOps team to do all the work, right? Like Wells mentioned out before, it's a collaboration between engineering, development, and the DevOps team. So when we talk about the transformation work we did here, so Connor heads up our platform team, and we had a lot of his team working alongside the DevOps team together to build that out. So I think overall we had about Service Fabric, we had maybe 5 or 6 people across 4 overall. Yeah, 4 overall.
So DevOps team is mainly DevOps coaches per se, because it's per DevOps normally.
Yeah, it's so the DevOps team is a kind of bad, like you don't create a DevOps team, right? You create a DevOps culture. So for us, the DevOps team actually means people like Wells who've got the expertise and set the vision on what we're trying to do, and then help out the teams to kind of coach and bring them up. So
I think that was a key part, is kind of an early adopter, is just do as I do, so that Wells and team the first version, so that hey, this is the framework, this is how we want you to use it, and now run yourselves. And yeah.
And the second question there was how long before we saw any value. So I think the process started from a creation of a team started around May last year, and then I think from a project perspective, we started this around October, right? And in May, is that right? Connor, is that when we started ANZ rolled over in May? Sometime around May this year? Sometime around May. Yeah, sometime around May this year is when we actually started having production workloads going out using our new process. So around May. So it wasn't a long time. It was a fair bit of time to get everything working, but it's a journey, right? So that was for one ANZ environment we have here. We are rolling out North America. We actually finished North America now. We're just moving customers onto it. And there's a few other ones that are still stragglers in our old system still. But yeah, so it's from October to May is when we became started getting value out of it. Take another question, or how do you figure that out?
Yeah, we have a couple of good ones. Or we got anyone from the? Oh, well, we got David, and then we'll go around.
My question is, if you have one source of truth, do you actually commit to that truth each time? You do a version when it's okay, and if that's the case, how do you roll back just in case that it ended up that version didn't work?
Yeah, so the rollback, I'm going to show that in the demo. So we master branch, we no commit is allowed to master branch. So we only accept and then merges from the release when the release is passed. Then we tag every release, every version in the master branch, and we have a good way to roll back. Because when we deploy to a version to production, we mark that version as released. Then, but if the version is currently having some issues, then we can roll back to the last released version. Okay.
Because in GitFlow, what's master or main now is what's the source of truth. That's the thing I could redeploy and it will work. So normally what happens is that you deploy to prod, validate prod is working fine, and then you merge to master. Not merging to master before going to prod, because effectively master or main is meant to be the one which is always working.
Yeah.
So normally what happens is that over environments we know as you go to develop, you effectively validate everything, and you deploy to prod, and once you pass the early life support, then you merge to master. Yeah,
it's kind of still kind of chicken eggs issues. So we actually what we do is we merge to master. Then, but every release is marked as released. Then, if we have issues, then we roll back. Then we organize code changes to fix the issue. So that's what we follow. But we can also deploy to production first, then merge. That is another. But anyway, the master is a single choice of a source of truth. So as you can see, just maybe some internal issues. Then after retry, I deployed the. Let's check the ports we deployed. Oh, sorry. Switch to dev. What happened? So we can say the.
Well, goes back. We want to. We've got a couple more questions online, but we want to go back to the back. You guys had some questions out there.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to ask, as you know that Microsoft is going to New Zealand, is that going to affect the company anyway?
I can probably answer that. So short answer is probably not right now. The main reason for that is we don't have in New Zealand, we don't have kind of data protection laws against moving our data outside. So once in Australia, obviously they're having laws now coming in that their content needs to stay inside Australia. It's not a problem with Azure. I think New Zealand will likely follow suit, and when they do, it'll benefit us having a data center here. Most of our customers are actually in North America and Australia. That's why you guys haven't heard of us, right? So, most of the customers I showed you up there are not in New Zealand. We do have quite a few here. So. Sorry, I didn't hear that. Can you say that again? No, so the way we're setting up our overall architecture is that despite us talking about Australia and New Zealand, different regions, the way we want to set up our overall production environment is a single environment, right? Potentially with multiple deployment stamps serving different customer bases. So ultimately, we'll end up being in the US probably as being our central location, with our data coming back to New Zealand if we have to for legislative reasons, in Australia. That's kind of the structure we're thinking about. But yeah, it's too early for us to kind of make a major decision on that.
I was going to say that actually one of the questions online relates to that as well, so it might be worth asking now. So, do you deploy to a single Azure region, or have you replicated your setup in different regions? And if you replicate your setup, do you end up with a single data repo from all regions? Will all data always stay in region? So this is the geo.
So this is Connor and I, like the debates that we have around this, right? So from a management perspective, from a DevOps and management of resource perspective, it makes it easier if everything's in one place. The complexity comes with do you want to impact your entire customer base when there's a problem? Do you want to impact? As we know, Azure is has its problems, right? Occasionally has its hiccups. And do you want to take down your entire worldwide environment when that happens? Is one side of the question. And the other one is, do you want to have resiliency and redundancy built around different regions? Now, our approach right now is to think of it as, if you are deploying everything as ISC, if you are deploying everything as pipelines, these are just stamps of the same environment. It doesn't really matter. It matters when it comes to cost reduction, trying to bring everything together. But from an architecture, from an engineering perspective, it doesn't really matter. So that's kind of our thinking at the moment, but we're having internal debates around cost reduction to bring everything alongside under the same kind of overall compute instance with some kind of stamp kind of layout inside it to service the different needs. So that's kind of the internal debate, but yeah, so the whole idea is that once we do all this, doesn't matter, right? You can spin up a div and a prod and multiple prods, they're all the same.
Yeah, I got a story to share because when we roll out to when we replicate to the NZ environment to US, we actually, with the time we took to set up the US environment, just a couple of hours. So within a day, we can actually spin up a new environment, deploy a new tenant in a different region. So because we are doing IC pipelines all automated, so that's the advantage we have. Okay, so now I'm successfully bring up the DevTiv environment. So as we can see, we got 2 pods running. So if we check the version of this one, so we can see that's the alpha.8 for dev environment. And if we go to now, we see the app is deployed as in Coretex. Thank you. So now we have 100% automation pass. We can check the release. So essentially, check the release is to create a release branch. So we're gonna run trigger a build pipeline. So that's the one. That's the start release will be triggered. So let's see what's gonna happen. That's low downloading. Okay, now it's running.
You don't do PR triggers.
PR trigger.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we actually we have PR triggers for some of the project, but this is only for demonstration, so I didn't enable that. So as you can see, we create a new release branch, started release finished. If we check from here, so branches, we got the release. We got a release branch 0.11.0. So this one triggered the release branch, the build trigger. When this finished, we're gonna run this finish release and merge to master. We generate the build. So as you may notice, so we're using a beta for the release branch. We also pushed these images to beta. That's the one. If we have a release QA environment, we're going to take the version from there and deploy and run automation. And then release pipeline, yeah, I think finish release also triggered. So as you can see, so finish release finished. So we actually closed this branch off. Let's check. Yeah, it's gone. So we closed that branch and merged to master and developer. So now we have the master build triggered. This one, because we when we merge to master, we also merge to developer. So, but if we have endless loop problem, but this is for demonstration. We actually, as I mentioned earlier, the reason why we are using Git flow is because we want to have a release cycle, but streamlined. So we don't usually do that. We can orchestrate a daily deployment or weekly deployment in a separate orchestration.
There's a question while that's going well. Another question that's come up here is around does the DevOps team provide governance regarding the Azure infrastructure components to use and how to architect them? So this is actually a debate we're having internally at the moment. So there's, when it comes to technology choices, there's the need or the desire to have the teams have independence over what they pick, but there's also a desire to make sure that the technology they pick is something we can support from an overall company perspective, right? So you don't want to go have a team with maybe 2 engineers picking a technology that only they know how to support, and they go away on leave or they change and things don't work. So what we're trying to do is at an engineering org level, we have some policies around which tech do we want to support. That doesn't prevent new tech from coming in. It just means new tech have a barrier to entry. That means there's a POC, there's a process where we discuss things and get approval from senior engineer management.
If you take on a company though to look at changing their app or updating their app, would that not dictate though as to where their current technology is?
Can you rephrase the question? I'm not sure I understood.
If you take on another company,
yeah,
you know, a client, and that particular client's environment could be in a different one that you're currently using, for example.
Yeah.
Would that dictate though your need to do a change?
So we are a product company, right? So because we are a product company, we don't actually do software for clients. They use our software as SaaS platform.
Yeah.
So we get to dictate what tech stack we run on our platform. Okay. It's different from being a service organization where you have to work with clients to service them.
But that's what I'm meaning, because if they have a particular style of, let's call it A, and the one of your services are the.
Or from an integration perspective?
Yeah.
All right, okay, that's a good question. So from an integration perspective, what we are trying to do now is providing an integration platform that allows clients to access our data using a standard set of ways.
Okay.
And we provide, and I think Jerry's at the back here, he's leading that platform there, so he could probably answer this more than I. But we are looking at providing, for example, for crowd operations, here's a standard API set. For streaming analytics, we integrate with some of the common providers out there already. If you're not one of those common providers, then we get them to work with a partner to build that for them. As long as they interface with our standard interface, that's kind of the level we support. That allows us to, as an organization, kind of stay inside our realm without having to do custom work for every client.
You build patterns and practices basically so that it can be used by other.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think there was, that leads us into one other question that was asked online. I'm just trying to remember which one it was. Oh, okay, no, this is a different one. This is one more for you, Wells. So it looks like you're using the DevOps UI instead of the YAML pipelines. How do you manage review pipeline changes?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the advantage of the YAML pipeline is that we can do version control, but we don't get that for the classical editor, the release pipeline or build pipelines. So the decision was that because still the same reason, we want to have flexible orchestrations. So the key reason is that we want to separate builds and releases. So because we are not microservices yet, so each service, what usually happens is that we orchestrate the release and go into production. So it's extremely important for us to have the artifacts available for all the applications. Then we can orchestrate a release into production. So we choose to use the classical pipelines. But in future, I imagine when we move to a continuous deployment phase, we're going to definitely leverage the YAML-based pipelines, so we can do versioning control. The pipeline will be also a source of truth in the repositories.
If you want to promote the culture of DevOps, of having autonomy within the teams, also having YAML pipeline provides is that you can have multiple projects from a DevOps perspective. And from the YAML pipeline, you can have a master project that mechanically feeds from the releases of the other projects straight in YAML. So that might be a way to give autonomy to the teams.
Yeah, exactly. So we got more capabilities when switched to YAML. I imagine it will be happening in the near future. Okay, so as you can see, we got a new version for the production rollout. Then if we go to the production pipelines, so we upgrade the Vault. So we have finished the automation. Then if we refresh here in Coretex. Okay. So if I switch to production, then we should see the versions. So how we can roll back? So now the question is that if the automation failed, what do we do? So we got a rollback release, a rollback pipeline called rollback, because this one can be triggered when the test automation failed. So if we run this one, the version is 0.10.0. That's the previous version. So here comes my second question: how we achieve that? What services are we leveraging to achieve that? So why we can pick up from here 0.10.0? Git version.
Can you get to the container registry?
Container registry. Close.
A case.
A
case.
case.
Like, because you're using that service, would you not use the previous one you had?
There might be an option.
Just doing a minus one of the Python variable. Or?
We actually we are leveraging the Azure artifact. So for the master branch, we actually push every release to Azure artifact. So that's the approach. So mark that the release as a release or not to release. So we can pick up from there. So that's why we can pick up. So if we run that, of course, we're gonna roll back to the 0.1.10.0. Then if we are happy with, then we promote. Okay, so promote. Then we mark that release as a released, and also yeah, we actually we got some notifications in the Teams channel anyway. So when we start a release or finish the release, deploy production or automation failed, we got notifications in the Teams channel. So the team can respond to the incident. Yeah, that's pretty much. I want to show the demo.
Well done. Do you want to take some? We're going to need more questions from the audience. Well, we'll get another one of that.
Do you sometimes have to reiterate builds before you release?
Sorry.
Do you
have to reiterate the builds before you release?
In reality, so
yeah.
yes. So in reality, yes. Unless the automation is 100% correct and covers all scenarios, you'll find issues, right? You can find issues. So when you do find issues, that's why, and maybe you can ask this one, Wells, but that's why we don't automatically promote them as release. Because if you have to make a change and hotfix, you have to do that first before we actually mark that as release run.
Yeah,
It's
so
not the same artifact that goes from dev to prod.
It'll be a new artifact. So it is,
New
there's no changes required. But it'll be a new artifact if there's a
Do
change.
you take the same container and retag it, or do you rebuild the container?
rebuild the container. So
It's not the same artifact.
No. Sorry. It's the same container that goes into prod, right?
we build the container from the branch, from the source code.
Even from the alpha one?
Sorry.
When you build your Docker file, when you do your Docker build,
Yeah.
you do Docker builds, so you do 1 or 3 times.
Docker build. We got. I think we just very simple. It's a build image, then push the image.
For once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just once.
So it's the same artifact, just retagged every time.
Well, so we build the image from the source code, then we push that image to the container registry.
Yeah.
So that's the same, as long as the code
So
is
that's
the same.
Alpha. So you have the 0.11.8 alpha, and
Yeah.
then after, how did it become beta 1? Is it you just retagged or you rebuilt?
We we create a new release branch. That the branch is
the container registry. It's just retagging.
no, not retagging, rebuild. So we trust the code, right? Because when we have a development branch, then we create a new release branch. From that one, the code is exactly the same at that point.
But it's not the same artifact.
No, it's not the same artifact, of course.
It is. Yeah, it is. I mean, that is one of those challenges. That you're right, because it is being rebuilt. The binary theoretically could be different. Different dependencies may have occurred, and there's always that not different bits. So that's obviously something you could look at some point. And of course, this is something you from with TPD and truck-based development and things like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because the only truth we should trust is the source code, right? If it happens, then we build the image. It doesn't reflect the source code. Then we need to fix how we build the approach. We build the image. And we need to fix that to make sure if the code is the same, then we have the same. Yeah.
so, Keith, we need more questions. And by the way, Brian at the back there is ignoring me. He's got t-shirts to give away, so if you have asked a question, go and ask him for a t-shirt, not one of the small ones. But Keith, are you guys going to be more questions? Anyone? Yep.
It was showing a whole bunch of images actually, and this is a demonstration project, right? So the size of image will be quite less. When you consolidate whole bunch of projects into one. The size of storage will actually increase. So how many images do you think you will be handling at one point in time? How many images you can handle in system at one point in time? Is the storage a concern for you?
Well, so we need to have separate build pipelines for images, for single services. So each service should have its own build procedures and the pipelines to build the images and push the images. So that's what so-called microservices. In future, they will be independently upgradable, deployable, but we just have a pipeline orchestration to put them into the same picture so we can deploy all of them to production in a one go. So they will be maintained separately, independently.
So to answer kind of another angle on that question, because I know Sababa is an employee, by the way, so he's a new employee, but he's asking this question because he knows something that maybe you guys don't. So one of the issues around kind of transforming into this type of approach is if you have a monolithic code base and a single monolithic build, you need to fix that first, right? And fixing that usually is not just a build change; it's an architecture code change. So that's kind of the front of this. You need to be able to split up your code into smaller components that you can still deliver and manage independently. So that's part of the transition that's going on behind the scenes here as well, which is kind of what's feeding the capability that Wes is showing. So what you're seeing now in our legacy environment is not how the new stuff is like.
Yeah, componentization, microservices, transform into microservices is important so we can have independently releasable blocks, and we can use some dependency management to make them loosely coupled to each other. They can have independent life cycle. Yeah, that's a transformation challenge.
Very frankly, if you are sending changes into one microservice and one API, and the changes of the microservices have proven wrong at the customer, and then you have to roll back the changes. So are you going to roll back just microservices change or the whole microservices and we can change?
Yes,
What?
question about dependencies.
Yeah. So dependencies. So each service, if it has a dependency, then each version is related to a specific dependency. So when we say we roll back to a specific version, it also means it's related to a specific dependency. Like if you have dependency to a common library, this version is related to 0.1, then we roll back to that version. We treat them as a whole.
So I'll get a question from, because Dan wants me to ask it. So we have a question online asking about how much solution architecture support do we actually get from Microsoft. So I'll actually.
I did not plant this. This is not me.
So I don't know if you guys were there at was it a fast track event I spoke at Microsoft a while ago? Can't remember what it was now. I think it was fast track.
Yeah,
it was fast track event. So the way we engage with Microsoft is it kind of comes down to a few different areas, right? So fast track is one thing that we use quite a lot. So when we started this project early on, we had internally obviously ideas on what we want to do, but we tapped into the fast track team quite a lot at the initial stages of that project to understand whether what we're trying to build kind of aligns with best practices from their perspective. There's things we should be looking at that we haven't. And throughout that process, we have been working very closely with Dan and John, a few others, to get help when we needed to, right? So when we first rolled out, I think Service Fabric, we had weird issues with Service Fabric that nobody could figure out, and we got somebody from the US in the actual Service Fabric team to sit down with us and go through config line by line to figure out what's going on. So we do get like that level of support as well, but it's been ongoing interaction with them.
Fast track's internal resource we have for any software creators delivering you with those metrics. So it's a group that we have that we can leverage. So you probably have to hit up myself and Dan if you want to know about that.
Yeah. But yeah, thumbs up to fast track. They've been quite useful.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're on the call to hear that.
So some of them are here.
Yes.
Dan. Awesome.
No, John Downs, Dan, the two Dans.
Yeah. Dan Larson, who actually was organising this user group up until a few months ago. So, any other questions? Otherwise, anything else internally? Otherwise, we're gonna, because obviously you guys you've taken a little bit of extra time, and we really appreciate that from the Coretex team, taking all this time out of their day, especially to share this, because it's a it's a journey, not not a destination. So they've done a huge amount of work, and it's been exciting to see you guys do it. So thank you very much to Wells, and who's put an amazing amount of time, and Sajid, the whole team. Thank you guys for showing up. And yes, if you did ask a question, go to Ryan and get the shit.
And there's also, you guys get the little Coretex notepads? No?
No, QR code.
You got QR code, did you get a notepad? Okay. All right, but you would have got what you got. We thought you were going to get some notepads for you guys as well, but enjoy the food. I think there's some leftovers. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask us afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Stop there.
Questions?
Yeah.